Project for today is going to be this Exmark Quest zero-turn mower. He's having starting issues with it, and the first thing I noticed when he brought it in was this is just a cheap aftermarket starter you can get on like Amazon or eBay. It's not an actual Briggs starter. And then I peeked under the cover. I don't think you can really see in there, but the gear is stripped off of it. So this is not a very old starter, it's fairly new, so that's why I don't recommend any of the electronic stuff really that you can buy aftermarket. I'd rather just get an OEM Briggs & Stratton if you can. Sometimes you can't, so you're just forced to get the aftermarket. But right now, when we turn the key, nothing happens. So we can jump the contacts on this solenoid. And you can hear it's just spinning the starter. So what I'm thinking happened is when that gear got jammed up in there, maybe it blew a fuse. And on these, the fuse box is under this red cover. You can see down in here, it's got a little map for which the fuses are. But we need to get this off. It's just these two bolts here and here. And then we'll check those fuses to see if that's the problem. Otherwise, it could be a safety switch or something. But we'll pull that off first and see what we're dealing with. I don't think you have to pull these all the way out. You can slide it forward and get it out, but it's just easier sometimes to pull that stuff all the way. It's just those two bolts and then it slides up and out of here. Then down in here, you can see our fuses. This is only a 20 amp and it should have a 25, and this is blown. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that on camera, that fuse is blown right there. We'll throw a new fuse in it, and I'm guessing that this should work. So I put a new fuse in there. So now it's working the starter, but we just have a bad starter. So I think we're gonna have to pull this cover off, and then we can get to the starter bolts and we'll get that pulled out of there and replace it. So first I'm gonna pull this air cleaner cover off, which this side looks like the plastic is ripped off it. That's kind of common on this style Briggs. We'll pull that off of there, and the air cleaner just pulls out, which we'll clean that up probably. And then this just kind of push the snaps and that comes off. Then we've got some 5/16 bolts up here, and then I think they're 3/8 around the outside. Pull that cover off. So I'm gonna pull these off first. And that pops off of there. And all these bolts around the cover. So there's 6 bolts around that cover, and that slides up and off of there. It looks like our gear stripped on the little spline that it runs on that the actual starter. The gear's still there. But yeah, it just spins without spinning the actual starter motor over. So then there's a couple of 1/2-inch bolts through here. I think they usually have a Torx on them too, so if it's hard to get a socket in there, you can put a Torx bit in there. It's kind of hard to get a camera down in there, so I'll just show you once I get it out. But I'm using a 1/4-inch drive ratchet and extension because it's not the easiest to get in there. They don't give you much room, and these don't have the Torx hole on the end of the bolts. You kind of got to turn the starter so you get to where you can get the socket in there. Yeah, somebody just put their own bolts in there. That's not the right bolts for it, so it makes it a little harder to... This is the correct one. I guess I could have used the Torx on that inside one. That's the harder one to get to. Then we've got a wire down on there I'll have to get off. That's a 7/16 nut on there. So I got it out of there. That's the stud that had the wire on it. So it's definitely not a Briggs starter. You can see this melted stuff on there is this kind of worm gear part is melted right out of this part down here. So you might be able to actually fix that, but I'm just gonna probably either find a good aftermarket or an actual Briggs starter to put on here. So he didn't want to spend the money on a new starter, but I did have a good used one here. He's gonna be selling this machine apparently, so it's like 120 I think or something like that for the actual Briggs starter. So I had a used one here. A lot of these Briggs starters are the same. You just have to count the amount of teeth they have and make sure this is a plastic ring gear, so it's a plastic starter gear also. You just don't want to mix up the gears, so if like the starter had a steel gear, you don't want to have plastic gear on the flywheel. If you have a steel on the flywheel and a steel on the starter, that's fine. Or aluminum on the flywheel, and then it'll be a plastic one on the starter. So this is how it's supposed to move up and down instead of being all melted in there. So I'll throw this one on and then we'll test it and make sure it works before I put the cover all back together. So it's a little bit tricky. I'm gonna put the bolt in here first before we put it up in here. Kind of just got to go by feel to get that bolt started. I think it started. And this one will kind of do the same thing. It's a little bit easier on the lawn tractors. On these zero turns, when they're in this little hole, it's kind of hard to see what you're doing. I got those tightened down. Now I just got to hook up the power wire. Then we can test it quick. Should be fine. Let's see if it'll spin over. Perfect. We'll get throwing that cover back on, and then we need to replace a spindle on this one. These covers can be a little bit tricky to get everything sat back down. Usually start all the bolts first and then tighten them down so we can still move it around and get everything lined up. This one is kind of stuck in my socket though. And tighten that one down a little bit, get it out of there. So I'm going to see if it'll fire up. I want to drive it up onto the lift and we'll take a look at that spindle. He said that somebody had put a new spindle in it before he bought it, and it was the wrong spindle, so it cuts like, I think he said 3/4 of an inch or something lower on one side than the other, so we're going to have to figure out what's going on with that. Well, it seemed to start really good, and it runs okay, so we don't have any problem there. We'll get it lifted up and see what's going on. If we can actually visually see it's a different spindle. So it looks like just visually looking at it, that blade and that blade look the same, and that one over there looks like it's up higher than the rest of them. It's kind of hard to tell what they got going on here. So those look like the same spindles though, so maybe it's just this end one that's different. We'll pop the bolts out of it and see. He said he thought one had a different size shaft, so I know this is a different size bolt, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a different size shaft. But yeah, this one looks visibly shorter from the blade from there to there versus from here to here. So we'll pull that blade off and see what it looks like under there. So yeah, this has a kind of a spacer on the bolt and stuff. This is not the right spindle, so I'll have to look up the right one for this and order one, because that's a lot different than the ones over here. This one you can see has a much bigger bolt, and then it's just a couple of flat washers, and this one had this little bolt with some washers and then this spacer in there, so I don't know what they had going on there. So I got the new spindle. This was the rotary part number for it. This one, I'll compare it to the other one and show you, but you can see from the casting right up here how it sticks out about an inch right here, and the other one is just sucked right up tight to that. This one has a little bit different setup than the other ones, where it has a bolt, some bigger washers, and it's got a piece like this. This is more like the other blades on the Pioneer Exmark that we had, so I'm not sure if that's going to work. That might be a problem. I guess that still works. I'm not sure why this one has that hex piece like that, so that'll be fine. That's the way the other Exmark was, and those worked fine, so the blade still fits tight on here. The other one had some spacer in between to hold it steady, so this should be the right way. So we'll get it lifted up and get pulling that old one out of there. So pull this cover off first. Just a couple of 1/2-inch nuts. Pull that up off. just all these bolts around. We'll walk this belt off. And try to keep that all in place for coming back on. We do have to pull this pulley off. So I'll get an impact for that. We maybe have to put the blade back on so I can hold it to get that nut off, but we'll see if the impact will take it. So see if this will take it, I'm not sure. I wasn't sure if it would. With this one I had to put a adapter on there. This is just a 3/8 impact. I'll grab the big one, see if that'll take it. This one should take it off. I'll have to get a glove, try to hold that. There we go. Thought there'd be a washer on top of that. That just slides on there like that. This kind of falls out when you take it off of there, but we'll have to put that on the new one. And then these are all just 1/2-inch bolts. The new spindle did come with the new hardware. A lot of times these will break off in that aluminum. There we go. That's all packed with junk in there. It's kind of a bad design to have a void in there like that. But I'll dump that out and then I'll show you the comparison between this one and the new one. So you can see how this one doesn't really have much of a gap from here to here. And then that one's got that long piece here that sticks off. So I'm not really sure what this was off of, because when I looked up the parts, these spindles are the same on the 48-inch cut and the 52 like this one. So I don't know why they had one that was so much different, or what that would have came out of. But we'll put this one in and it should cut level again. So this goes on from the underside. And this actually doesn't have threads in these holes. These bolts are like a self-tapping bolts that they give you. And that kind of locks them in so they won't come loose. I'll get a couple started. I can get the rest of them started now. And you do want to clean the underside of the deck where this mounts to. I scraped that off. Otherwise you'll get stuff wedged and it'll sit crooked. So we got that bolted in. We'll pull the, oh, I dropped her. Spindle comes right out of there, so you gotta, and there's a spacer in there, so it can be hard to get that all together. This kind of just sandwiches down on there. There's no keyway or anything. I'll just tighten that down. The impact, then when I get the blade on it, I'll be able to hang on to the blade and tighten it down the rest of the way. That other one, the shaft must have been, or the spindle shaft must have been bent just slightly, because this pulley looked like it was a little bit bent, but now it doesn't look too bad. I spin it. So now we'll go under there and put the blade on, and we'll spin it then and see how everything looks for height wise, and then we should be good to go. I'll walk this belt on here again. And just start it. Keep turning it around. These have a really heavy spring on them, so it's hard to get the belt or that spring on enough, so it's easier just to walk it on. This one actually has a belt diagram there. And everything still looks like it's on the pulleys. I always check, because when you take them off like that, it could come loose and come off of one of the pulleys. I'll show the belt diagram quick if you need a diagram for one of these. That's usually, the sticker gets peeled off of them, so it's kind of nice to have a reference of that. So it's got this blade and then this hex washer, and then another washer. We gotta make sure we line up that hex washer. So we don't tighten that down off center. That's how the other ones look, so I guess this is the same. Just a 5/8 bolt on this one, which is smaller than those other ones though. But you can see that the blades meet. They meet evenly now. I don't know if you get a good view of that. Yeah, there you go. When they meet even, before that blade was like an inch higher, so it's cutting pretty crooked. So that should be quite an improvement. So I'm gonna put a ratchet on here and I'll hold the blade. Make sure that's tight. Those have to be pretty tight, because it's not a kiwi or anything, it's just working on the squish of it all together. That should be good. And I'll put this cover back on. That should be good. And we can set it down and run it outside and test it out. Well, we've got it out in the yard here. Time to test it out. So it seemed to mow okay, but as I was hitting bumps, the blade was, or the deck was moving up and down kind of weird. So it's making kind of a wavy cut, but it was fairly level except for that. And I did notice that this is not adjusted correctly. All the rest of these are adjusted to the bottom of the slot, and this one's at the top. So we're just gonna adjust this one back to where it should be. I do level the decks usually on the concrete, but this one's pretty straightforward that it is down all the way with the other one, and then I'll recheck it once I get it tight here. So then that hangs tight with the other ones. So I'll bring it in the shop, and I have a little tool that goes underneath onto each blade, and it kind of will level it. We're mainly getting the side to side leveling with this one, or the up and down in the back, but that's the same as the other back one, so it should be fairly straight. So this is the tool I was talking about. It just goes underneath here. You want to make sure you're on flat concrete to do this. Then you just read the measurement. So we're at about 4.5 inches on this side. Then we'll go around to the other side. You've kind of got to pull the blade around so it's in the right spot. And that one is just shy of 4.5 inches. So we're good side to side. Then we'll turn the blade so it's towards the front and we can get the front to back. My concrete's not perfectly level either, so if we're within an 1/8 inch or so, it's usually pretty close. So we're just a little bit higher on this side than the other. So I think I'm going to leave it the way it is for now. And then it's a little bit hard to get that on camera when I was trying to monkey with everything and stuff, but we were pretty much around 4.5 inches about there on everything. So it's pretty close to level. I usually figure if it's like an 1/8 inch off on either side, it's usually fine, because the deck does kind of pivot around and stuff while you're mowing, so it's never going to be exactly perfect, but that's close enough. And then my yard is not the best judge of it either. I have pretty tough grass where it's sandy ground, so the grass is really tough to mow, and these blades aren't the sharpest ones, but this is all he wanted me to do to it. He's selling this one. When he gets it back, he's going to wash it up and put it for sale, so this one will be going down the road. But with that starter fixed and the new spindle on there, this should be a pretty good machine. It's got like 408 hours on it. He's got another one that's over 1,000 hours. So these are tough machines, these Exmarks. I really like these mowers. I see a few of them coming in now and then. They are better when they have the Kawasaki engine on them, but these Briggs aren't too bad as long as you make sure there's not a mouse nest in them or anything. They overheat and they'll lose valve guides in the heads if they overheat. But other than that, these are pretty heavy built mowers. But that's going to do it for this one. If you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.